Okay, the purpose of this video is to show the relationship between type 1 and type 2 errors and how one impacts the other. Because they move in opposite directions, we also talk about power of the test again. So we kind of have a couple graphs to go over, and the graph kind of gives you a visual sense, and then there's a few things I'm going to want you to memorize. So type 1 error, the probability of rejecting the null given the null was true. In other words, and by the way, it says error, so that means it was a mistake. All right. Please remember, a type 1 error cannot be committed if the null is not rejected. In other words, the only way you can do it is if you reject. All right. But just because you rejected doesn't mean it is an error. All right. In other words, a type 1 error may have been committed if the null is rejected, but only if the null is true. If the null is false and you rejected, you did the right thing. All right. Type 2 error, the probability of accepting the null given the null is false. All right. This is measured by beta. A type 2 error cannot be committed if the null is rejected. All right. It cannot be committed if the null is rejected. And we remember, we like to say type 2 is fail to reject. All right. It only happens if you fail to reject. Doesn't mean you did. All right. So a type 2 may have been committed if the null is not rejected, but that's only the case if it's false. If you don't reject the null and it was true, not an error. All right. Then we have power of the test, and power is a correct thing. This is doing the rejecting correctly. We rejected the hoe, and it was the right thing to do. Life lesson there. All right, so here's the way the diagram works. And all I want you to get, first off, if I look at alpha and beta, if I add those up, it doesn't equal an entire curve. So alpha plus beta does not equal 1. But if I were to push this way and to the right, alpha gets down. So as alpha goes down, what happens to beta below it? Well, beta would go up and power would go down. On the other hand, if I push it the opposite direction and alpha goes up, then beta goes down and power goes up. Ultimately, you need to memorize these directions, all right? Alpha goes down, beta goes up, power goes down. Now, please remember, alpha equals the probability of a type 1 error. Beta equals type 2 error. Power rejecting correctly, right? You rejected correctly. P-value less than alpha, rejected, good decision. You did the right thing. Okay? All right, so that covers that page. And this right here is a reminder of the symbols. Alpha is the probability of committing a type 1. Beta, the probability of committing a type 2. As type 1 error goes down, type 2 error goes up, and power goes down. In other words, alpha, beta, power. Same thing here. This is really key. If you increase sample size, it decreases type 2 error and increases power. There's a definition of power. Please remember power does equal 1 minus the probability of committing a type 2 error. And finally, here's our p-value definition. The probability of getting a test statistic this extreme or more extreme, given that the null is true. All right, thank you for following along. And I have to say that this is the most difficult thing that we do in all of AP, of all of statistics this semester. Thank you.